Moriden Athluan. Historians still seek to find out more about the mer whose actions ended the Fourth Era. Many are the tales that have been told of him, and most of them seem to contradict each other.
Most know him as the fabled Dragonborn of the Fourth Era, the savior of all Nirn, the mer who restored the lost dragon blood of the septim line of emperors to all Mandus.
Some insist that he was a cunning thief. More insist that he was a warrior without compare. Still, others argue that he was a mage of unrivaled power.
There are whispers that he was a slave to the Daedric lords. Some even claim, in tales told in the darkest corners of Skyrim, that he was a vampire lord.
Like all legends, there are bits of truth hiding among the embellishments and the exaggerations. No single telling of the legend matches any others. But there are some few things that are always the same. The truth, however. The truth is not what the bards would have you believe. Hearthfire, 4th Era, 201. The sun's rise found me high on the mountainside, already pushing towards Ivarstead. The road had been clear, unsurprisingly, given the recent warfare. Even the bandits weren't brave enough to step out of their holes just yet, lest they stumble straight into a patrol from either side. Through luck or skill, I managed to avoid any contact with anyone, and was able to enjoy the view and the peace that the trail afforded me. Looking back at Whiterun from here, the city seemed so small. Obviously it isn't, but it is funny how a little perspective can change things sometimes. By comparison, a few hours later I could look out across Eastmarch, and unlike Whiterun, which perches on its rise like a protective mother hen, Windhelm seems to squat. It does not inspire anything other than fear, a cold, dark blight on the bright northern landscape. While I think it unlikely that the city will ever be razed to the ground and completely rebuilt, it is the only thing I can think of that might improve the view. Of course, that would mean all my friends and fellow dunmeri would be homeless again. As bad as the home might be, it is still home for them, and I would not wish that upon them. I fear, though, that when it comes time to invade the city, my people will suffer more than they have since we were allowed to make do with the portion of the city now called the Grey Quarter. It might be a slum, barely fit for living, but it is our slum. The last climb into Ivarstead was a long one, and made none easier by the rain that began falling. I stood beneath the eaves of the local inn, debating. There was still plenty of daylight, and I had to decide if it was worth pressing on to Riften and stopping somewhere in the woods, when I suddenly realized that the camp I was bound for was not on the far side of the rift as I had thought, but just south of Ivarstead itself. Which made the decision for me, really. The camp was in good order and running smoothly, and, most importantly, unnoticed from the main roads when I arrived. I took a moment to make a few more health potions from the ingredients I'd gathered on the walk, then walked into the command tent. Perhaps it was my imagination, but I think Legate Ricka might have smiled for a moment when she saw me walk in. The game in Riften will be the oldest of back-alley tactics: blackmail. The city is well known as a center for corruption, including being known as the headquarters for the Thieves' Guild in Skyrim. Some reports say that the guild has its hand in everything that happens there. Others claim that they are a shadow of the guild that they were 10 years ago. Either way, what is known is that the Jarl's steward is rumored to have an arrangement of some kind with them. I'm not sure why this would be an embarrassment to her. It is practically business as usual in that city. On the other hand, the Jarl is known as Lawgiver, so perhaps the Jarl would have an issue or two with her steward running things behind her back with what is a blatantly illegal group of thieves. I am to go to Riften, find evidence of this arrangement, and persuade the steward to work with us. To give us something to work with. We don't have a good feel for Stormcloak activities here, other than confirmation that they occupy Fort Greenwall, not far from the city proper. If we are to take the rift, we'll need control of that fort, just as we needed Dunstad in the Pale. My orders received, I took a tent and bedroll for the night. It's still a decent distance to Riften, and I have no intention of doing it tonight in the rain if I can avoid it. 14 Hearthfire, 4th Era, 201. I'm not sure how, and I am afraid to learn how. But each day since the attack at Helgen, it becomes more apparent that it is not just a single dragon, or a small number of them, that have returned. Another one attacked as I walked the roads of the Southern Rift, and it differed from the other 3 I've fought. This one did not breathe fire, but pure blue lightning. I never thought I would owe my life to bandits, but dragons are indiscriminate about their targets. After I'd already put a few arrows into it, it flew further north and attacked a bandit fort on the north side of the river. Ice storms, arrow fire, you could see it all flying through the air as the 2 sides waged battle against each other. I ran in as quickly as I could, putting more arrows into the air during the fighting until, at last, the beast was forced to the ground and, in short order, killed. There was a moment of brief shared camaraderie, and then an awkward pause. I slowly moved towards the dragon, causing the whole disorientation sequence again, though I noticed it was less so this time. Maybe I'm getting used to it. More importantly, it caused the dragon to burn itself up, causing the bandits to back off significantly. I used that space to run. I wasn't going to wait around for them to recover from the shock. If I needed proof of the Thieves' Guild presence in the rift, I got it shortly later. Crossing a bridge, I caught sight of a shimmering movement just seconds before it fell away to reveal a thief, a rather stupid one, as it turned out. When she demanded my money, I simply told her to walk away. Apparently I have enough of a look to me that she actually reconsidered her attempt to rob me, told me to take this as a warning, of what, she didn't say, and started to walk away. I don't take kindly to people taking or trying to take my things. I shot her in the back of the head and walked away without a second thought. I reached the southwest gate of Riften, and was told that all the southern gates were closed. No explanation, though the guard referring to me as riffraff wasn't designed to make me inclined to think it was for any decent reason. An hour later, when I had made my way around the exterior of the walls and reached the north gate, that was confirmed. The guard there wasn't planning to let me in until I paid the visitor's tax, one of the sillier ways to try to extort money I've ever seen. And as a beggar, I've seen a lot. I called him on it, but he's made of sterner stuff than the thief I had killed earlier that day, which inspired me. I told him the story of the last thief who had tried to take my money and how I had left her corpse cold in the wilds of the rift without a second thought. The two guards exchanged uneasy looks as I told the story. When I concluded it, the one who had been trying to shake me down decided that it wasn't worth the effort and unlocked the doors. Welcome to Riften. The welcome mat just kept being rolled out. Within moments of entering the city, I'd already heard a conversation between two people about trying to clear out the Thieves' Guild from the city, and some family called Blackbriar that seems to rule both the city and the guild. Something is very off about this place. The guild, at least to my knowledge, rarely, if ever, answers to anyone else. Then again, in a city as corrupt as Riften is reputed to be, I could see the guild making arrangements with someone in power to make sure their own isn't threatened. Moments after that, I was pulled to the side by an obvious heavy. Calls himself Maul. A lookout of sorts. He asked my business in the city and warned me to keep my nose out of the business of both the Blackbriars and the guild. Well, I don't know who the Blackbriars are, nor do I care. As for the guild, the only thing I care about where they are concerned is their relationship with the city's steward. Not that I was going to tell that to this small-brain side of beef. I made like an intimidated yokel and left. My first stop would be the local inn, where I hoped to be able to overhear news, information, rumors, anything that might lead to learning something about the steward and her relationship with the guild. If there is one, I have to acknowledge the possibility that the Empire is barking up the wrong tree with this information, though I certainly hope that they aren't. Another 3 steps, and yet another example of the corruption of the city. I had to wait for the conversation to be over, but the details are pretty clear. The young man made arrangements for a business deal, borrowed money from a sharp-faced woman to cover some of the expenses, and then the shipment was robbed before it arrived in Riften. From her comments, it's fairly clear that she arranged for the robbery, and now she wants the original money back as well. This city clearly thrives on predation. In some ways, it's worse than Windhelm, but they at least have one thing over that hellhole. At least here, they don't care what your ancestry is. Everyone is a target. I promised the young man I would take care of the situation. I'm still not sure why, honestly. Perhaps because I see a dark future for this young man. A future similar to my own in Windhelm, if I do not step in. Inside the Bee and Bob, it was more of the same. One of the forgotten facts about Riften is that it is somehow the site chosen as the Temple of Mara, the divine governing love. About the only love here is the love of coin. This was brought to mind because, in the tavern, the priest of Mara was decrying the actions of the people and using the dragon's return as a sign of Mara's displeasure. I think not. Nor did anyone else there. The bouncer made the best comment, I think. Keep the sermons in the temple and let us sin in peace. A remarkable and restrained response, given everything I've seen in the last 20 minutes. The sharp-faced woman from earlier, Sapphire, she goes by, was in the room. I had a quick conversation with her, and though we both knew that what she had done was a setup, she, as I expected, held to her position. Rather than allow the young man to be punished unduly for his inexperienced mistake, I cleared the debt myself. At the moment, I can afford it. Whether that will still be true by the end of the day, who can say? I sat, listening, and taking the occasional sip of a drink. The connection between the Blackbriar family and the guild became more evident as conversation after conversation spoke of it. After 2 hours of hearing it, I decided that if I was going to learn about the guild, then talking to the Blackbriars might be the quickest way to do so. I also decided that talking to the head of the family, Maven, was not the way to do it. Her son, however, was in jail at the moment, and I had a good reason to speak to him minutes later. A business partner of his, one who was looking to buy a pedigreed horse, was complaining about Sibby's being in jail, and I took the opportunity to insert myself into that conversation. I'll likely have to do a bit of breaking and entering, something I've not resorted to before but know the basics of, to do the job itself. But it isn't the job I care about, it is the chance to talk to a Blackbriar who is on the outs with his family to learn more about the guild, and how it might be tied to the steward. The jails were interesting. While many of the people in there were people like Sibby, people who had just crossed the wrong person, there were others that might have been there for their own safety. This includes a rather odd blue Khajiit who kept talking to a dartwing in a jar. Called him Mr. Dragonfly the entire time. Sibby's cell was, apart from the bars, the least jail-like cell I have ever seen, almost luxurious. My conversation with him was not as informative as I'd have liked to believe. Once I had the details on the horse, something he didn't own and couldn't sell as it turned out, but that can be worked around, I tried to get a better feel for the guild and its relationship with the steward. All he could do was confirm that there was a link, though he had no idea what it was. He figured, though, that if such a link existed, then some kind of letters were likely going back and forth. All I had to do was find one of those letters, and I would have what I needed. He then also guessed that if such letters existed, they would likely be in the steward's personal rooms somewhere. Then again, he also said that a smart person would have burned such letters, lest they be found by someone looking to blackmail them. Like me. Riften is such a fun place. But it is still the best lead I have. Once I have this horse thing dealt with, I'll likely have to follow that lead, no matter how dead it may end up being. The Blackbriar Estate. The official home of the unofficial first family of Riften looked relatively unguarded on the outside. A single patroller walked the perimeter, but I assumed that such would not be the case on the inside. I knew from Sibby that Maven and the rest of the family tended to not be at the estate, preferring to stay closer to the seat of power in Mistvale Keep. But that didn't mean that they left it unguarded. Sibby is going to catch the blame for this if I pull it off. At least I was smart enough not to use my real name. All they'll have is that it was a dunmer, and I saw plenty of those in the city. I just have to pull it off cleanly. The job got messier than I'd hoped. From what Sibby tells me, these are all hired mercenaries that keep watch here, so there won't be any real drive for revenge over my robbery of the place, aside from their own pride. I'm taking anything halfway valuable that I can pass off as regular merchandise, stuff that isn't instantly identifiable. Between that and the theft of the horse, the signs should point to Sibby, and he's mad enough at his mother and the rest of the family that he's not likely to point them my way. Unfortunate business. It did, however, get me the information I needed. Once this is done, I'll do some poking around in Mistvale Keep. As nice as the horse was, I didn't want to ride into Riften on its back and advertise my transfer of ownership. I passed it off to Latrouche as planned, pocketing the septums, as agreed on with Civvy, and watched them ride off. The horse and the Blackbriar rage are his problem now. I returned to the Bee and Bob, where I took a room. I'm done with breaking and entering in Riften. I'll just settle for a bit of trespassing tomorrow when I visit the steward's room while she is engaged in legitimate state business. 15 Hearthfire, 4th Era, 201. Getting to the steward's room was more problematic than I'd thought it would be. The guards here are very observant, and even worse, seem to be pretty much everywhere. He took an invisibility potion and close observation to get to the rooms, and the Aedra alone know what I will need to do to get out. But I am here, and I know what I'm looking for will be here in these rooms, if anywhere. The trick is, where? And how much time do I have before I am discovered? I knew I was running out of time, but nowhere I had searched had turned anything up. Side tables, wardrobes, locked necklace displays, nothing was yielding anything to my searching eyes. I sat in the lone chair in the room, pondering. And then the answer came to me. The one place that few men would think to look, and even fewer women, honestly. I'd overlooked it, or rather, seen it, and immediately moved on. Its very nature would make most ignore it out of hand. I went back to her dresser drawers, pulling them out until I found the one I was seeking. And at the bottom, beneath some very interesting underthings, was a letter. Mayhap some might think it a letter from a lover, but I opened it and read it anyhow. It is not the Thieves' Guild that Anuriel has her arrangement with, but with Maven Blackbriar. Of course. Who else? That may be enough, as according to rumor, Maven all but runs the guild anyhow. There is enough here that the Jarl would certainly take issue with its content, especially since the Jarl is named specifically as someone to avoid. Now to get out of these rooms, and ponder how best to approach the steward. I left Mistvale Keep to ponder, though not overly long. The real trick to this whole thing was to get Anuriel alone and away from the Jarl to speak with her. I tried to think of a way to do this without seeming overly suspicious, but couldn't come up with anything plausible. So I decided to gamble and just say straight out that I needed to speak with her alone. Naturally, she asked why. I pulled out the letter enough that she could identify it, without drawing too much attention to it. Her eyes widened briefly, and then she nodded and waved for me to follow her. We went back to her room, where, once the doors were closed, we had a very frank discussion. Turns out she doesn't care for either side. She'll do whatever she needs to advance her own position. Nothing else matters to her. She offered up a caravan of gold and weapons bound for Windhelm as exchange for my silence. Enough on it, she said, that it would be slow, have several guards more than usual, and would make a significant difference in the war. It hadn't left yet, not for another day or so, but if I move quickly, I can get word back to the legate and get an attack force in position before it is beyond our reach. My answer was cheeky, I admit, but I couldn't resist. I walked over to her drawers again, opened the same drawer, and placed the letter gently, almost lovingly, back inside. She scowled the whole time, of course, but said nothing. Her secret was safe, though I doubt her position will be safe once the Empire rearranges things here in Riften after the war. But that's her problem now, not mine. I left Riften, heading back for the legate. The legate greeted me warmly at the camp just before sunset. I passed on the information, and when she heard about the caravan, her head dropped suddenly. At first I thought she was angry about something, but then I heard the long chuckling coming from beneath her helmet. There was wry humor in her voice when she informed me that she had sent a scout patrol to the north side of Fort Greenwall to look for exactly that kind of travel. She had ordered them only to watch and report, but with the information I have, I am to get a few hours rest, and then get out onto the road and find the scouts with revised orders. If we find that caravan, we are to attempt to take it. Knowing that battle likely lay ahead, I took to a bedroll for a few hours before setting off back towards Riften.